Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, brought to you by Lacrosse Boots. So here's what Lacrosse has recently done. They've taken their 100-plus years of experience to create a new line of lace-up hunting boots called the Navigator Series. Now, the Navigator Series comes in two options, the Atlas for men and the Windrose for both men and women. Now, if you want to find out more about their high-quality awesome boots, you need to go to lacrossefootwear.com.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet, chasing bear. I was in Bozeman, Montana last week, and Kevin Harlander and I sat down and we had a great conversation. Kevin is the First Lite community manager. We get into the nitty-gritty of layering systems, merino wool, and how to effectively use First Lite gear. So this is kind of a technical podcast with gear stuff, clothing stuff, but Kevin and I also have a great time. You'll get to learn about Kevin, some of his hunting. He's a super elk hunter, grew up in Minnesota. You're going to enjoy it. I want to bring your attention to a code that we're going to give out where you can get $5 off a subscription to Bear Hunting Magazine. Right now, we're working on the September-October issue. If you go to our new subscription section at bear-hunting.com, bear-hunting.com, you can type in the code BHM20. So that's like Bear Hunting Magazine, acronym BHM20. Get $5 off a new subscription. Lastly, I want to talk about our buddies at the Western Bear Foundation. Western Bear Foundation is a non-profit hunting conservation organization that's situated right out there in Cody, Wyoming, right in amongst all the some of the difficulty that they're having with the grizzly bears, with black bears. A lot of things going on out there that we need a voice. And the Western Bear Foundation is creating a new narrative for hunters out there by a lot of the stuff they're doing. They're a membership-based organization, so they're fueled by the funds brought in by members. So I want to encourage you, join the Western Bear Foundation. Check them out. Great organization fighting for the rights of hunters and for the good of black bears. Hey, on to the podcast from Bozeman, Montana, Kevin Harlander. All right. Welcome to the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I am in Bozeman, Montana, also known as the Bow Zone. I've learned I'm in Bozeman, Montana today, and I've got with me Kevin Harlander of First Lite. Kevin is the community manager.
That's correct.
Manager of First Lite.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. We are, man, this is really cool for me. We're at the Meat Eater Global Headquarters. Now, Kevin,
HQ,
you may not know this about Bear Hunting Magazine, but we call the Bear Hunting Magazine where we're at the global headquarters.
I like that.
Right?
That's what it says on the sign.
Global headquarters
at First Lite too, over in Ketchum.
Yeah,
First Lite Global HQ.
Yeah. So man,
awesome.
we're actually in the podcasting studio of Meat Eater, which is a cool thing. And to give a little context of why that we're here is that First Lite, as everybody would know, has recently been acquired by Meat Eater.
Right.
And so Kevin was in First Lite's based out of Ketchum, Idaho.
Correct.
About 5 hours from here.
Yeah.
And you guys came down and are showing some of the new products, talking about some of the stuff with the people here at Meat Eater.
Yeah, that's correct. So we've been working with Meat Eater and Steve specifically for a long time. He's one of our longest partners. And so, we've been recently acquired and nothing's changing on our end. And it's been really positive just to be able to collaborate with these guys on a closer level. So we're up here with Bridget and Ford and a bunch of our marketing team and just kind of showcasing some of our product that we're putting into gear testing for 2020. These guys help out a lot with that since they're in the field so often.
Right.
And then just kind of seeing the home turf for these guys, and it's always fun to come to Bozeman. It's a kind of the heart and soul of the outdoor industry, so it's good to catch up with folks.
I don't know that people outside the industry would necessarily know that,
right.
But in Bozeman, right here, is you tell me the companies that you know that are right here in Bozeman.
Sitka Gear, Onyx, Mystery Ranch. I'm going to forget a bunch more, but obviously Meat Eater, Stone Glacier. Schnee's Boots are here.
And Bozeman is a town of about 45,000.
Yeah,
I've heard. So it's not like this. It's not like a massive city.
Yeah, and I'm not the best expert, obviously, on Bozeman, Montana. I used to roll through here on the way to fire season when I was in college a lot, but it's a great place. Great place, and a lot of good people too. It's fun to. We were out at dinner last night, and you run into folks from like the Wild Sheep Foundation, and then there's guys rolling in from 2% for conservation. It's kind of just this revolving door of folks. And it's fun. It's really fun.
Schnee's is here.
They are, yep.
Yeah.
We're actually going to go over there this afternoon and try on some of their boots. So.
Oh, really?
I've actually never worn Schnee's boots. Yeah, so we'll check them out.
Nice. Well, Bozeman is a neat town. I've never spent much time here. On our way to where we hunted in western Montana for spring bear this year, we pulled in with our mules in our trailer and parked like directly in the alley behind Schnee's.
That's awesome.
We were like making blocks around
trying
Schnee's.
to
We just wanted to pull in there just to say we went to Schnee's in Bozeman.
Yeah.
And right behind the store, it's like this downtown area, like a really nice downtown area, like old downtown with these small shops along the main street, just buzzing
like an
with
old
people.
Western strip.
Just buzzing with people. And so we pull up like right behind their back door, and I was like, they're not going to tow us if we're in there for like 15 minutes with mules. Yeah. So, man, we just put the flashers on.
That's awesome.
And went in there. But that was my first time. That's a neat store.
Yeah, I bet. I'm excited. To go in there.
But Bozeman is, I guess for a western town, maybe this is like standard. But, basically in any direction that you look, you're seeing these big snow-capped mountains. Yeah. Here it is, July. Mm-hmm. That's pretty spectacular. You guys out west are used to this kind of stuff.
Yeah, we're pretty lucky that way, right? Yeah. It's a beautiful place, and especially as you get into sort of the Intermountain West and in the Rocky Mountains, it's just it's rugged country and beautiful. And we hold on to our snow, although this year's been pretty hot midsummer. So we'll see. It's hopefully we don't get too many fires.
Yeah. Well, it looked like a lot of snow to me, but any snow is a lot of snow for a guy from Arkansas.
That's right.
But, now, hey, before we jump into what I want to do on the podcast, I want to talk about some of the First Lite stuff.
Yeah,
but before we do that, I want to learn some stuff about you. Sure. I just met Kevin like
this morning in the lobby,
basically this morning, and the only reason I recognized him was because I watched on Facebook First Lite's. You guys recorded a deal where you were cooking elk burgers.
Yeah, we're doing this series called Fuel the Fundamentals, and it's awesome. It's just guys from the office, and we're cooking up just really simple, basic recipes, but easy recipes to kind of mess up. So yeah, we've been doing.
I learned something though. Really, when I went into a burger cooking video.
Yeah.
I mean, I really wasn't thinking, I'm going to learn something that's
exactly.
like, but the butter.
Yeah.
That came out of left field for me, but I get it, man. Butter
I like a
on
little
anything.
crispy bun, and then also right on the burger itself, right? You kind of crisp up the exterior of that burger, and it just helps with. We had my girlfriend and I last summer raised some hogs, so we mixed in the bacon ends into that elk grind, and it just turned out really delicious. But the butter on top, right, especially when you put it on like a hot fire, it like instantly crisps, and it's just like a little, not crunchy, but just a little bit of crispiness on the outside. It's delicious.
It, man.
Delicious.
Yeah, I'm definitely gonna.
Everything's better with butter.
Definitely gonna do that.
That's right.
Yeah. I want to hear about your hogs too. We raised some pigs.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, but
it's awesome.
Well, but I wanted to introduce you.
Yeah, sure.
And I want to hear about your history.
Yeah,
and,
you got it.
And and it's cool that you work for First Lite. I mean, that's my question. What I just personally wanted to ask you is, how the heck did you start working for First Lite?
That's it's kind of a long road, you know.
Yeah. But give me kind of I know you're a hunter.
Yeah,
I know you're a good elk hunter.
Yeah.
I know that if you were a firefighter, you're tough and mountain worn.
That's right.
good. But
That's right.
just give me a little history of just your personal history, where you grew up. But then,
sure. Yeah, that sounds great. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota, so I'm born and raised there and lived there till I went to school to college in northeastern Iowa, a school called Loras College, kind of in the heart of whitetail country. So I grew up whitetail hunting. We had a family place up in northern Minnesota, right on the headwaters of the Mississippi or near it. Mm-hmm. Spent a lot of time up there as a kid, and it was always interesting growing up in the city and then being outside all the time in our neighborhood and kind of in our area, and then going up north. We called it going up north every chance we could get. It seemed like every weekend my mom would kind of get everything rolling, and my dad would roll home from work, and we just head for the hills.
Is there a culture? I know in Michigan there's this culture of everybody wanting to go to the UP for vacation.
Certainly.
Like, is it kind of like that in Minnesota?
Yeah, it seems like
it's
everybody
not a UP, but
everybody or their neighbor has a place on a lake, right? And they call them cabins. They're just cabins on a lake, and that's really the heart and soul, I would say, of Minnesota summer culture and winter culture. So it's everybody in the Midwest, specifically in St. Paul, Minneapolis, and the surrounding area seems to have a place up north, or knew somebody with a place up north. So
That's
there's like
cool.
a migration to the North Country every
and
summer.
so most of the population would be further south.
Yeah, certainly. Now Minnesota's a long state, right, tip to tail, but the heart of the population all resides sort of in that central to south central part of the state. So.
Right.
Yeah, we spent a lot of time going up north and learned to fish and hunt from my dad and my mom as well, and my grandfather and my brothers, and so we that was always a part of who we were growing up, and we always ate a lot of fish, ate a lot of venison, and grouse and ducks and geese. So it was.
So you grew up deer hunting?
We did, yeah, and it's totally different than any of the deer hunting I've ever done in the West and in Iowa too. Mm-hmm. So we were hunting in northern Minnesota with, basically I think the first gun I ever shot a deer with was that 30-30 lever action. So everything's brushy, thick country.
Yeah.
All the deer are really big-bodied whitetails, but you wouldn't, like if you shot what they would call in northern Minnesota 8-pointer, right?
Yeah.
4x4 in the West.
It's an 8-pointer, man.
8-pointer,
Don't get influenced by this Western stuff, man.
That's right.
Tell the truth. It's an 8-pointer. It's not a 4x4.
If you shoot an 8-pointer in Minnesota, in northern Minnesota, that is like a dandy, and a small basket rack. Okay, so small racked deer, but tough northern deer.
Yeah,
because it's cold.
You tree stand hunting up there,
but
do
not
they do a lot of drives, or you
a
just
little
hunting
bit of
like
driving,
terrain features and stuff?
Mostly just corridors during the rut. So you're just hunting travel corridors for the most part. Okay, but thick country. We drive once in a while, usually like on a Sunday afternoon where you're heading out
when you're going home.
Yeah, we do a quick drive.
Last ditch effort.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we spent a lot of time up there when I was a kid, and we were always enjoying sort of the way to up north too. There's a lot of great state parks and rec areas in Minnesota, and they do a good job of keeping those places wild, which is I'm really fortunate to have grown up there. So then I went to college in Iowa. I played baseball down there and whitetail hunted quite a bit.
Really, in Iowa public land, or
well, actually the doozy about Iowa a little bit. There's a lot of public land, not compared to the West or even parts of the Midwest. But what's interesting about Iowa is there's a real culture around like agriculture mixed with wildland, or I should say wildlife habitat. Okay. So there's a lot of people, especially when I was coming up through some biology programs, they were trying to change the way they thought about land use rather than just a sort of reap the land situation with pure agriculture. They were trying to work in sort of this regenerative, healthy ecosystem management with some hunting. And I think what was really cool is I got to be a part of a couple different farms that were transitioning from strictly just agriculture to wildlife management as well. And
did you ever kill a big deer up there?
I did kill some decent deer, yeah.
What's a decent deer?
I think a decent deer in Iowa is probably like 145, 150, right? And then they talk about these 170-inch deer as you get farther into southern Iowa. But we were just a little bit farther north from where the real like boomer bucks go down. So that was a great experience, and it was cool because everybody, like my baseball coach in college was an avid deer hunter, so he took me out a few times, and I sort of relearned how to whitetail hunt there.
Right, it would be totally different than northern Minnesota.
Certainly.
Heavily forested.
Yeah, exactly. So you're hunting a lot of field edges, a lot of like travel corridors, managing different chunks of ground. You know, I never really knew what a food plot was until I went to Iowa. So then in the summertime when I was in college, I was heading out to Oregon to fight wildland fire. So I did that.
That was just like a summer job.
It was, yeah. It's the greatest summer job ever because you're on the road a lot, you're working a lot of hours, can't spend any money, and then at the end of the summer you just hand a check over to school. It's just like back to it. But met a lot of my greatest friends doing that. And then what's really interesting is that's how I introduced to elk hunting. So I stayed a couple seasons later into September and just started going with these guys and hunting with these guys. And the greatest part about that was I just had this real opportunity to learn from people that lived in this country all the time. And so we were elk hunting, and that was a great gift and something I'm really grateful for. So just a phenomenal state. Oregon's wonderful. I lived in Eastern Oregon for the better part of 10 years on and off. And just really fell in love with that place. And now I'm over in Idaho. So the short of it is, I suppose we're going to get to this, but I was working after I was done fighting fire. I was managing the marketing and sales for a brewery in Eastern Oregon. And while I was doing that, I was guiding elk hunts with my good friend James Nash. He runs an outfit called Six Ranch Outfitters. So we worked together for a couple of years. And then I was also doing some film work for Ben Potter at Con Outdoors. So we did some waterfowl projects together. And I was like dipping my toe into the outdoor industry because I was really scared about like, okay, I love this so much. If I go in full on,
is it going to ruin it for me?
Am I going to get burned out on this, or is it not going to be fun? And so I've always been kind of cautious, I should say, about mixing my passions in my work. So, but it's been the best decision I've ever made, man. This has been the greatest. I started like in beginning of May, and it's just been a whirlwind. It's just been awesome.
So you're jumping to full-time outdoor industry. It's just been just this year.
Yeah, just this year. Yeah. And it's been just phenomenal. So my role, I get to work with so many different cool people, and I manage a team of the best pro team in the country. I think they're just awesome guys. We got great guides and outfitters, and just a really solid team put together at First Lite. So it's great.
So you were doing marketing and media and photography and some video and learning from some really good guys like these Can Outdoors guys. And so how the heck did that translate into, I mean, you just applied for a job at First Lite, or did you know some of the First Lite folks?
So through James Nash, my friend I just mentioned, him and Cody Rich became pretty good friends, and Cody runs a podcast and a bunch of other businesses. That guy's a genius marketer and a really good dude. So Cody and I have become pretty close, and Cody and I have worked together a little bit, and a job popped on First Lite, and I've been trying to think about, my girlfriend and I were like, we're going to move, we're going to do something new. And we were actually in Norway visiting her family. Her family's from the country in Norway. And I just saw this job pop, and I was just laying in bed, and I was like, I'm going to apply for this thing. And so I called Cody, and he's like, yeah, man, I'll talk to those guys. And I just set up a meeting and was able to kind of secure the deal. And it's been just phenomenal. So, yeah.
So you've been at First Lite since May.
Yeah.
Awesome, man.
Pretty quick.
Well,
it's been quick.
Well, that's great. Now I know. So you're hunting public land elk in Idaho?
Yeah.
Well, no. Oregon is where you mainly. That's where
Oregon.
you mainly learned your elk hunting.
Yep. And I will say, like, I've killed a few elk with my bow, and the majority of it's been on public land, but a lot of it's been on private too. Just because I think one of the things that's interesting growing up in the Midwest, we had a skill set that I developed from learning from other folks of how to ask for permission, not just coming and taking, right? It's like, hey, I see, mister, you've got some fence down. Can I rebuild that for you? Can Can I get you a cord of
The
wood?
old
Can I do something?
rebuild fence trick.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like those guys work their butts off on their ground. They take a lot of pride in their property and things like that. So I wanted to try to figure out a way to utilize that skill set of talking with people and doing that to gain some access. So I've learned and sort of facilitated some relationships through that. So
That's good.
yeah, for sure.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, maybe this is a good place to get into some of the First Lite. Well, I think we can say this is that the Meat Eater acquisition of First Lite, for those in the industry, it was pretty. I mean, it's kind of a cool thing,
morning, right?
I mean, it was kind of like, wow, that's surprising,
Right.
But then once it happened, maybe it wasn't surprising. But Steve Ranella obviously has been the main First Lite media guy,
For
even
sure.
though he's not owned First Lite. I mean,
No.
he's just been somebody that has worn First Lite, helped them build their brand, and I mean, somebody that the outdoor industry. I mean, in my mind, he's at the top of the heap.
Yeah, certainly. Just his ability to bring people into the fold is just incredible. We're talking about guys that maybe have, and women and men that have never picked up a rifle, never spent any time in the woods, and they're attracted to this model that Steve's built. One of the things I talked about with Ben O'Brien a little bit too is just like how much opportunity Steve's brought for so many people in the industry to have a voice to talk about what they want to talk about.
Yeah.
So it's been awesome to get to know him a little bit as well.
So did you start working for First Lite? It was before the acquisition.
Yeah, it's just pretty quick before. It was about a month in, actually. So,
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, what I want to do is I kind of want to act like nobody knows anything
Great.
about. Could we categorize First Lite gear as like technical hunting gear? I mean,
Yeah,
would that be
certainly.
the most simple description of what it would
Yeah,
be?
certainly.
Because I think, a lot of my listeners would be probably from the South and Midwest
Got it.
mainly.
Yep.
And I mean, historically, and still, those hunters are massively dominated by cotton.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Cotton kills, man.
I mean, it's. I mean, it's. And when I say that, I mean just kind of standard hunting gear that we've all
Right,
used
yeah.
and survived on, and it still works for people.
That's what I grew up using.
Yeah, I did too. We didn't know any different. I mean,
Yeah,
if
that's right.
in my mind, when I was growing up, wool was like this itchy stuff that your dad would make you wear sometime, but you didn't really want to.
Right.
But
Ice
that's-
fishing gear.
That's so it's so different. But so let's pretend like
Sure.
people don't understand what technical hunting gear is and how it can help them and what it's like.
Right.
But I also kind of want to talk about some of the new First Lite stuff. 'Cause
Yeah, of
some
course.
people would be, but talk to me about like a basic layering system.
Yeah, and we call them our kits. So
Kit.
the way that people should think about First Lite is it's a full service apparel company, right?
Okay.
And what the goal of everything we make and everything that we've tried to develop, from my understanding in the last 10, 12 years, has been to try to allow the hunter to stay out in the field longer, to sit in that tree just a couple more hours, to be dry, cool, warm when you need to be.
Go further, stay longer.
That's right. And so those sort of the ethos of this whole company has been started in the idea that we can make a piece of gear for every situation, for any climate, for any part of the world. And it started with merino wool. So they were the first company ever. We were the first company ever, I should say, to print a pattern on merino wool.
A camo pattern.
Camo pattern,
So
right.
historically, merino wool had been used in the
Sure.
ski industry
Ski,
and outdoor
yeah,
industry, but had been solid color.
Exactly.
They couldn't figure out how to
Yeah, for
imprint
some reason. So that's kind of where it started, right? Was we understood that there was this high quality material that could be close to skin, next to skin, that could serve as sort of your base layer for all activity, whether it was 90 degrees in South Texas,
Yes.
or 12 degrees in northern Minnesota in a deer stand. So when you talk about a kit from First
And
Lite,
let me stop you right there. In both of those situations, that's what you want is
Yeah.
the merino wool against your skin.
Yeah, it keeps you cold when you're in hot temperatures and keeps you
Because
toasty when
it's
cold.
wicking, and maybe we could even just stop right there and talk about merino wool, which this is something that people typically in the southern hunting culture don't understand. But actually, what you want to be wearing when it's 85 degrees and you're on an active hunt is merino wool.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Because you guys make all sorts of super light stuff that's going to wick moisture away, number one. It pulls moisture away from the skin, but it dries quickly, number two.
Yep.
So it dries way quicker than cotton. I don't know. It'd be interesting to actually hear the science of why or how, but it does. It dries much quicker. So all of us have been wearing a cotton shirt and just drenched it, and then it stays wet and damp the whole day.
Certainly. And I'm familiar with that humidity. Now, growing up in Minnesota, it was brutally hot. And I actually just got back from a hunt in Texas. We were down there twice this spring, and we were in deep, like, South Texas, right on the border. And it was hot, like 100 degrees, 90% humidity, brutal. And I'm wearing we make a piece called a wick hoodie, and it's a hooded shirt. And you wouldn't really think, man, a hood in that hot a temperature would be brutal. But it's the 150 weight. It's called our wick. And I was reasonably comfortable. And I think the biggest part is, you're going to sweat. Even if you're, wearing nothing, you're going to sweat, right?
Yeah.
But the ability for that garment to take your sweat and pull it off your skin, hold on to it, and then get rid of it is pretty incredible. Yeah. And, you're drying pretty quickly.
Right.
Sweating buckets.
Quicker than cotton.
Yeah, certainly quicker than cotton.
And then the third thing is that it holds much less odor than cotton.
Yeah,
I mean,
certainly.
And you don't even realize it until you begin to compare the two fabrics after you've wore them. But I mean, like, you take a cotton shirt and you sweat in it all day. That night, whether you're back at your tent or back at your house or wherever, you pick up that shirt the next day, it smells terrible.
Yeah, I mean, you're getting a friend of mine, we were just talking about James Nash. He rode his motorcycle in a wick T-shirt for 1,100 miles, I think, in the same T-shirt, 10 days. And that dude stinks usually. And he didn't smell at all.
Yeah.
He's been really impressed. So there's examples like that, right? Where if you did that in a cotton shirt, it'd be pretty brutal.
So those three things are the fundamental things that you got to understand if you're going to wear merino.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, that's why you do it versus cotton. Now, cotton is comfortable. I mean, that's probably the primary cotton's comfortable and cheap.
Yeah.
And comfortable when it's dry anyway.
Yeah, that's right.
But the thing about this merino that to fill in the gaps from somebody like me who grew up in the wool that my dad used to make me wear sometimes was like prickly.
Yeah, right.
This merino wool is it's basically comparable to cotton in its softness and the way it feels against the skin.
If not softer too.
Yeah,
for sure. And the reason there is so the merino wool comes from obviously a different sheep, the merino sheep.
Right.
It's just a softer wool, and it feels good on your skin. It's not agitating at all. The nice part about merino as well is that in our garments, we mix that with just a little bit of stretch material.
Yeah.
So, classic merino or any sort of wool over time sort of wears down.
Yeah.
But if you implement these
little bit of synthetic in it.
just a little bit of stretch, I mean, that thing holds up for a good lifetime. So.
I heard this is interesting to me thinking about the biology of it, but I think I heard Scott Robinson say this, but the merino sheep, the reason that merino wool on a human is good to wear when it's hot and also good to wear when it's cold is because the temperature where these sheep are can get ultra hot, but also ultra cold.
Right.
And so this animal can't molt and shed to this degree of actually what it needs. So it formed this covering that would thermoregulate when it was hot. It would draw heat away and draw moisture away, but when it was cold, it would insulate. So it's kind of cool to think you're taking this natural resource that was designed to do this very thing and spinning it into yarn and making garments. And I think probably the biggest complaint, if we're just being honest about it, is that the durability of just 100% merino wool, which I've had, and I want to go back to just educating people because I think if people are educated, they're more, they understand. And I heard Scott say this is that I've had some just 100% merino wool stuff that started to get some holes in it after time and stuff, but when you spin in the synthetics, it does make it stronger.
Right.
But Scott was saying about how you're really dealing with a natural commodity that has differences.
Right.
I mean, it's like being a logger and you're cutting down a forest that like had really fast growth and wide tree rings, and the lumber is just a little bit different than like this old slow growth stuff. Maybe 100%. It's the same kind of tree. And so he's saying that there's even variations in wool from
Yeah.
different years and different suppliers. And I mean, I think y'all get it all from the same supplier, but
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, those sheep, if you think about it, like the difference in sheep 1 versus sheep 3 is probably the bit of a difference because they're different individuals.
Yeah.
But that's a pretty cool process too, to be using natural fiber, to create these garments for sure.
yeah. But it helps me to think that, like, we just buy clothing and put it on, and you don't ever think about, like, this is actually, it's almost like an art as much as it's a science, and
totally.
making this gear. And Scott was also talking about how they've gone to, I'm pretty sure he said they've gone to New Zealand and met these farmers and the commodity, it's a commodity that can become scarce. So they have to have relationships with these guys so that if it is scarce, that they'll sell to you guys rather than to sell to someone else.
Yeah.
Anyway,
And they've
it was
developed
news
that,
to
yeah.
me.
Yeah, and it's an interesting world. I'm just kind of diving in where, like we mentioned, we're getting into sort of our testing cycle for our years down the road's gear.
Yeah.
So I've been learning a little bit more about that process, and it is interesting because it comes down to relationships, and especially on the gear test side, all the way down to the raw materials.
Yeah.
And that's what's cool about a small company. We have the ability to go and meet those people, on the ground, which is cool.
Well, anything else so the foundation of First Lite is merino wool.
Yeah, so we've expanded past that.
Way past that.
Yeah, but that is the foundation, and I think that's the most important component of any kit, right? You start
what's actually touching your skin.
Yeah, you start the skin and you work your way out. Arguably, I would say that the two most important pieces really in your kit are your boots and your base layer.
Yeah.
Just because it spends the most time on your body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So what about talk to me about just some of the other outerwear and gear. And I mean, like, so you were talking about the kit. So walk me through a kit then.
Sure, yeah.
So
for sure.
I stopped. I interrupted you, Kevin. I'm
No,
just
that's
talking,
fine.
nerding out about merino wool.
No, I hear you. So we'll probably do like let's just go through like my everyday ultimate kit, right?
There we go.
So I think the biggest thing to start with in any kit is, like we mentioned, that sort of that base layer. And the main component of my base layer, it starts with those wick long boxer briefs. Just because that is something that's next to my skin all the time. It's wicking that moisture away from arguably probably one of the hottest regions of your body, your upper legs and your crotch. So I usually mix that in with a men's wick hoodie, which is our base layer. I was talking about that a little bit. I've been wearing that down in Texas. That's a great piece. I like the hood feature too, because that hood feature allows you to conceal and also keep some sun off your neck as well. And I can wear that all the way through in the winter.
With that base layer, it's not even temperature control as much as it is shade.
Sure, yeah.
In some places, which I guess would end up being temperature control, but in the wrong way. Usually you think of a hood as trying to keep you warm.
Exactly.
But man, sometimes glassing when it's 70 degrees, you just want to get away from the sun.
And I'm sure we're talking, this base layer stuff is a piece that I would wear whether it's, 90 degrees in Texas for my start all the way to 5 degrees in Minnesota or whatever.
Yeah.
And I would exchange certain pieces, obviously, with different temperature ranges. We make some heavier weight long sleeve pieces too, specifically the Fuse and things like that, the men's Fuse crew. So I start, with the basic long johns, the men's wick long boxer brief, and then the men's wick hoodie. On the pants side, we make these pants called the Corrugate Guide pants, which I think are just bomber. They're tough pants. They're 4-way stretch, DWR, which means they're a little bit water resistant. Okay. It's kind of my go-to. However, we just released a pair of pants called the Guide Light pants, which I wore down in Texas 2 weeks ago. It's a really light but durable material, and it almost feels like you're not wearing pants at all. But they're tough, so they held up in that kind of mesquite country. That's a great pair of pants as well. So those are the two that I'll probably cycle through. And then, as we build our way through that stuff.
Hey, let me say something about the Corrugate Guide pants.
Yeah.
I don't want to. Well, okay, I'm going to take this into the third person here.
Sure.
Let's say that there was a man and his wife had a pair of yoga pants.
Yeah.
Okay, you with me?
Yeah.
Like the stretchy yoga pants that women like and are so comfortable.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say that any man has ever put those on. But if they had, they would recognize why women like to wear those so much, because they're very comfortable.
Yeah. It's just basically a pair of long underwear, right? Long johns, kind of.
Right. But the stretchy material, mainly what I'm talking about is the stretchy, lightweight material that fits fairly close to skin.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
To me, the corrugate guide pants are like hunting, and I don't want to brand these the wrong way.
I know. I'll take it.
They're comfortable. I don't want to say hunting yoga pant because we're gonna all of a sudden.
Oh man, the internet will explode.
My man card's strong enough that I'm okay with saying that. But no, they're just comfortable.
Yeah, I agree.
That's what I'm saying. They're just very comfortable. You feel like you're not wearing a pant.
Yeah, and that's why I think those corrugate guide pants they satisfy so many different terrains, elements, parts of the country as well.
Yeah.
It's a great pair of pants for sure.
Yeah.
A lot of guys like the Obsidian Merino pants for all purposes. And I think those are a great pair of pants too. So really the core lineup that we've introduced is the corrugate guide pant and the merino wool pants. We got our guide lights, and then the ones that I'm really excited about are called the Sawbucks. Yes. So that's basically a corrugate guide pant, but it's got reinforced, almost looks just like an upland pant would.
We call those briar breeches.
Briar breeches. That's a great name. Should have called you. That's a great name.
I mean, that's what I would say would be a pretty common name in the South for a pant like that. I mean, they've got a briar, quote unquote, briar resistant front.
Certainly,
that's different than the back.
I was crawling around in those things in South Texas in this like mesquite and this cat claw, just nasty stuff, and they held up really well. So I'm stoked about those things. And
what were you doing in Texas, man?
We were doing a lot of things, but I was with Cable Smith and we were hunting nilgai, which is a crazy animal. Are you familiar with those things?
Yeah.
I never
short little horns, big African animal introduced into South Texas.
Yeah, crazy looking animals. They're huge.
When were you there?
I was there with Cable in May, I believe, and then I was just back in the hill country hunting axis deer with a couple dudes. So
okay, did y'all kill it now, guy?
Oh, we did. Yeah, Cable did.
I hear it's really good meat.
Delicious.
I had a buddy, actually Colby Moorhead, the Bear Tech, as he's known, works with me at the global headquarters.
Global HQ.
He's from Texas originally, and he wants to go on a nilgai hunt because he thinks it's a financial decision.
Oh,
he thinks for the amount that you pay to go on one of these hunts, that you get that much quality meat in return.
Yeah, I would agree. It was delicious. I've been really fortunate. The last two animals we got to kill in Texas are both delicious. Axis deer and nilgai. I mean, give me a break.
How big was the nilgai you killed?
It was big. On the hoof, I don't know. They must be between like 500 and 600 pounds. They're giant. It's like an elk, basically, a little bit bigger than an elk at times. And this is a good bull, so they must be upwards of between 500 and 700 pounds, I'd imagine.
Okay.
Big beasts.
Yeah. I've never been around them, but I'm familiar with them.
Yeah, they're crazy. But that was a good trip for sure. So, yeah, I guess on the kit side, those pants they held up really well. Those will all be available now too. That's new for 2019.
The Sawbucks they've become my new go-to pant for just I'm not necessarily incorporated into let me think about that for a minute. I wasn't able to use them for some reason when I was in Montana this spring, but I like the toughness of them. You feel like you can work. I mean, sometimes a hunting trip is more than just about slipping through stalking an animal. The whole backside of it is actual work. Like you're moving stuff, you're getting dirty, and so I like that. That Sawbuck has that rough front that you can it feels more kind of like a work pant, even though that's not a good description of it.
Yeah, but I think it trends that way, right? Yeah. Whereas like the Guide Light is an ultralight pant made for spot and stalking, hot weather, early season. The Sawbuck, you could stack wood in those things.
Right.
You could split wood. You could do some work around your ranch, but you can also go through the briars in your briar breeches.
Yep.
So, that's awesome. I love that name. And then I guess the next piece when we keep going up top, right? I love the Klamath hoodie. It's a great piece. It's a great fleece product. Just really awesome. It's durable, keeps me warm. And then we just came out with a men's Brooks down sweater, which has been phenomenal. I was wearing that this morning. And, it's a super lightweight, puffy jacket. Fits in like a water bottle. It's super tiny, but carries some great warmth. I love that. And then, to round it off, I really have been enjoying, like in the springtime, especially before it gets to summer, that Sawtooth hybrid jacket. It's pretty awesome. Kind of a lightweight. I think you've worn that one a little bit too.
Yeah.
And then when it gets super cold, when we're talking like, and this is one of the things we've sort of delved into, I guess, the last few years is into our down jacket program. And the men's Chamberlain down jacket is just absolutely bomb-proof. And I'm sure you probably wore that bear hunting this spring a little bit.
No, I took it up there.
Okay. This wasn't cold enough.
I wore it like while I was traveling. I find those jackets to be really comfortable.
Oh man, it's
almost like you're wearing a sleeping bag. And while we were traveling, it was super cold going through South Dakota. South Dakota and eastern Montana. We were driving through like the snow and stuff, and like getting out to get gas and check on the mules. I would slip that on because it's the smooth. I like that down stuff with the smooth. I don't know what synthetic outer shell it is, but you can just put it on easy, take it off easy. You know? Just like that Brooks jacket, and I've got one of those too. The Brooks,
the Sawtooth, or the Brooks down sweater.
The Brooks down sweater. Got it. I like those because they're just easy to put on and off.
Yeah,
you know?
They're extremely packable too. You know, and they can just throw them in the bottom of your pack. And the nice part about that Chamberlain, it is bigger.
It's very warm, very. I wore it in Canada. Is where I put it to the test.
That's awesome.
Last year in Manitoba on some all-day sits. When noise wasn't an issue, I was muzzleloader hunting, so it wasn't like I was trying to get within 20 yards of the deer.
Sure.
Because it's not made to be quiet necessarily.
Right. It's a glassing jacket, right? Or like a cold weather.
Oh man, I truly love that jacket.
Yeah, it's got 30% more down too than most of the jackets on the market.
Is that treated down?
Yeah. So for the way that I understand it, like this one is truly the down jacket. It's that 800 fill power down. Okay. So it's coated for sure. So
if it gets wet, it doesn't
clump.
Like flatten up. And
we're coming out with a great video on how that synthetic down works, and that should be out pretty soon. But it's pretty remarkable how that stuff can take some water and still perform. It's an incredible piece for sure. And then on the other thing too is that I was going to mention really quick is we just have an outstanding lineup of gloves this year. Specifically, we've got those down mittens that are really cool. That is like sleeping bags for your hands, really. And those are great for just.
What do they call those?
Let me see. I think we're calling them. If I pull these up correctly, I think we're calling them the Brooks. Yeah, the Brooks down glassing mitt.
Oh,
so they're great.
Now, what was it before the big 3-finger split?
So those are the Grizzly trigger mitts, and we updated those again this year. And those are sweet too. Those are like extreme cold.
See a picture of
it. Yeah, there you go. So they're right here.
Now, see, when I was in Idaho in 2017, it was like we would get on snowmobiles in the morning. It would be like below zero.
Yeah,
and man, I wore those riding a snowmobile
because you can actually punch the trigger, right?
Yeah,
that's right.
They were perfect.
Yeah, that's a good piece. I've been pretty impressed with those. I haven't actually worn them in super cold weather yet, but I can tell they're going to be bomb proof. The ones I have worn are those Shale Touch hybrid gloves, which they got a reinforced knuckle patch. Those are great for crawling around. Like if you're doing some dipping and dodging, they're just a bomb proof glove. And then of course just some updated merino gloves, which incorporate sort of the ability to touch your phone and sort of navigate with your phone if you're using Onyx or whatever. Yeah. So those would be really great too.
You know what I find? I most of the time when I'm hunting in Arkansas with the temperatures we have, even tree stand hunting, I don't like to wear gloves. I would rather keep hands in pockets and feel like I'm just nimble with my hands.
Agreed.
That being said, my go-to glove most of the time is those lightweight, like merino wool, ultra thin. Yeah. What do they call those?
They call those the touch liner glove, probably. Those ones.
Yeah.
And then there's also the merino.
They're certainly not something you'd want to. They don't take a lot of wear. I mean, you don't want to load firewood in your truck with them. Yeah. But they're just enough warmth that they take the sting off the cold if your hands are out or if your hand's on a bow.
Yeah.
When you're bow hunting, a lot of times you're holding your bow.
Yeah.
So one hand has to be out of a pocket, and so you're like rotating between hands.
Right.
and it kind of takes the sting off, but it feels like you're not wearing a glove. You're still really have a lot of dexterity and can move around. So I just find I go to those a lot.
I'm with you, and I never was a glove guy myself either, but I've been wearing the fingerless merino gloves, and they're pretty awesome. That just cuts right off above that second knuckle.
See, I don't have those.
I'll have to get you some. They're sweet. It's nice to have just some feeling. I seem to lose feeling in my fingers pretty quickly when it's cold.
Yeah.
But these things help because they keep that warmth sort of in the core of your hand, and it's a great piece for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that's about all for the new gear that I wanted to highlight with you. So
what about the bibs that are coming out?
Yeah, so let me pull those up because they're really awesome. I want to show you a picture. We've been trying on some of that stuff now, but
so you guys are producing some new whitetail tree stand oriented stuff. And last year it was some of the Catalyst stuff, which the Catalyst would have been a soft shell, so it would have been quiet for bow hunters. A lot of any whitetail guy. I was just telling some of the guys earlier, I think that's on the forefront of most whitetail tree stand bow hunters' minds is quietness.
Yeah, so Go ahead.
Well, which is, I think sometimes people use the wrong stuff, because the ultralight, Western hunting stuff, like you guys would have, that would have these synthetic shells.
Right.
It doesn't matter if that's quiet or not.
Yep.
And to get that ultralight, you've got to have this kind of stuff that's a little bit louder.
That's correct.
And so I think sometimes people have, or I've seen it, Kevin, where guys have bought a puffy jacket and wanted to bow hunt with it, in Missouri.
Yeah.
And be like, oh man, that stuff's loud.
Yeah.
It's it's the wrong application.
Exactly. Yeah, everything's got there's a certain tool, right, in every kit, right, that makes it work. And the nice part about the stuff we've been doing in the whitetail world is we've addressed like I mentioned before, the core components of how am I going to stay in that tree longer, and how, because the buck of a lifetime might walk by at 1:34 p.m. and you might be freezing. So what we've tried to do is adjust our program to identify and try to solve those problems. And one of the things that comes from that research is the ability to stay quiet and stay out there longer. So the system that we're coming out with now that should launch pretty soon, it's going to probably be early August. It's called the Men's Solitude Kit.
Solitude.
Yep. And that Solitude Kit is made with the same fabric, the brushed 2-layer fabric, which is silent. You can swish your legs together all you want. It's not going to make a sound. What's really cool about this kit, there's a few things. One, it comes in you have a jacket and a bib, and it's got this kit link system where you can basically get from, it's sort of hard to explain without seeing it, but you can get from the external side of your jacket into that bib front pocket, which is sweet for whitetail guys, because you can essentially utilize your whole system without having to take a jacket off or unzip a pocket or whatever like that.
So the idea would be you could have you could have bib, like bib overalls.
Correct.
Underneath.
Yeah.
And there's pockets on the chest part of that bib that you're going to want to have important stuff inside of.
Right.
And you put this Solitude jacket on. I just saw it this morning, and you zip it all the way up.
Yep.
Historically, you would have had to zip it all the way down.
Correct.
To get back into the chest bib. But what you guys have is these little zippers over here about mid-rib.
Yep.
Like if you split from the chin to your navel, it would be about halfway.
That's correct.
And you have zippers so that you can get into that chest pocket.
Yeah, and that's we were just talking about, the worst thing ever when you're in the tree is kind of bending over, or you're looking around and something falls out of your pocket, because I'm not going to climb down and get it. There's no way.
Yeah.
So this is a great way to be able to keep everything sort of internal and also manage your heat too. So what happens is with a lot of this stuff is when you open a pocket, you're releasing heat or letting, hot air in or whatever. So this is going to allow you to sort of manage that. So the zipper fits around your hand really nicely, and it's a good system for sure. And I'm excited. I'm excited to wear this in the tree this year. Yeah, we're going to try this out.
Well, and it's a mid-level between. So for a couple of years, you guys have had the Sanctuary stuff for whitetail hunting, which I would describe as a very much so cold weather gear, which is awesome. It really is. It's thick, heavy stuff, but you're not going to want to wear that unless it's below 30 degrees, I would say.
I think that's right in there. And what the Solitude does is mesh your early season to your late season. So the heart of the rut in the Midwest, anyway, is November 6th maybe. So you can get some pretty variable temperatures. The nice part about the
could
solitude,
be pretty warm then.
it could be warm. It could be freezing. You could have 20 below.
Yeah.
So the nice part about the solitude is it allows you to layer underneath and still be silent on the top layer, which I think is probably in the scheme of trying to identify like what works the best in a tree stand. You know, being quiet, staying warm, and staying out there longer. 3 components that are pretty essential.
Yeah.
Because if it doesn't matter if you're toasty warm all the way to, like we said, 1:34 p.m. and you draw back your bow and it goes, that buck of a lifetime skirts off into the timber. It's like, well, glad I was warm, but I wish I was cold and quiet. So we've tried to address all those problems in one piece, and I think we did a pretty good job.
Let me say something about the Solitude bibs, which I saw them and put them on just this morning. I wasn't expecting it. So let me just describe so everybody, we're all on the same page. Historically, a bib would have had zippers from the ankles to the hip, basically. And so, like, if you're putting on like the Sanctuary, you would have clothes on and your boots on when you put this bib over it. And so you open it up as wide as possible so that your boots don't get clogged up.
Yeah, I got
and you kind of jump into them. Well, the Solitude has zippers that it's got a double zipper, and I don't know the term for it, but it's got a zipper that goes basically from almost like your armpit, the highest part of the bib that goes down, and the zipper that also comes back up, and so you can really open up the top of that bib to easily get into them. Right. I mean, that was my favorite part of the Solitude.
That's awesome. That's great to hear, because I think that Ben and Greg spent a lot of time working through that and figuring that out. And I think the biggest other thing that we think about in the whitetail world is maximizing your time, right? A lot of guys are ripping out after work trying to get to the tree or whatever it may be. So trying to ease that use and make it really compatible throughout.
Well, you don't want to have to take your boots off to put that on, because that's going to be the last thing you want to put on. Like you're going to be wearing... I mean, you just don't want to put that on because it is insulation. If you're going to be moving, like maybe even want to put it on at the tree stand. That's what I do a lot with my insulated bibs is I'll carry them to the stand because I might have a little bit of a walk and don't want to break a sweat. And man, if you can not have to do like, a circus act to get into them. So I thought that was really innovative to have the zippers on the top of that bib. And I love bibs. You heard me talking to this guy.
We've been talking about bibs all day. I'm with you.
I like bibs. I really do.
I appreciate that. That's awesome. Well, yeah, and those pieces, like I said, will be available probably early August. We're still waiting on some shipments, but
I think that's gonna do good. And all the whitetail pieces have the holes in the top upper back for safety straps to fit through.
Yep, and that's going to be sort of a mainstay on all the whitetail stuff going forward, just for that safety element, because we don't want anybody falling out of a tree. So and that works great for all harness types. So.
Again, somebody who's never heard anything about First Lite or to me, when you put it on, and you don't understand this until you put it on, is the shooter's cut. Which is like a typical jacket. And when I was growing up, my dad was always putting me in his old stuff.
Of course, yeah.
Like, none of it ever fit, and it was always real bulky, and I could hardly shoot my bow out of it. So that would be like the worst case scenario is that you got this super bulky stuff that when you get the bow drawn, there's fabric sticking out in between the line of where the bow's going to drop, So with all of these garments, First Lite, just the design of it, and I think this gets into like a high-end custom designed clothing, like has a shooter's cut, which means, and I don't know the mechanics of it. I mean, there's got to be mechanics, like there's more fabric here and less fabric here, but I don't know what it is, but I just know that it works. Like you have no restriction when you make the move to either draw a bow or shoulder a rifle. No restriction. You don't feel it. You don't, and when you draw back, everything is just in line with your body and not sticking out on clothing that fits you. I mean, obviously you had something that didn't fit you, it wouldn't do that. But that when I hand a jacket to a buddy of mine that's never put on something before like that, I'm like, you're going to notice the shooter's cut. And then every time they go, wow, it doesn't, there's no drag, there's no resistance I'm I'm doing my hands like I'm shooting a bow right here. You know, but
yeah, I agree. And I think that the coolest part is, you know, first and foremost, First Lite was founded by guys that hunt. And I think that's the coolest part of it is, you know, they're actively involved in the development of each piece. And that's a perfect example is the slenderness. If that's even, I think that's a word.
Sure.
But the sleeve sort of tapers so you don't have that bulk. You don't have that like sort of cinching up of material. Yeah, they've done a great job of addressing problems that, you know, have been found, so to speak, while hunting, right? They're trying to correct problems that they've experienced. That goes from Western elk hunting to bear hunting in the BC to deer hunting in South Texas, right? They're addressing all these issues through, first and foremost, the sort of the foundation of the company, and then all the people we work with to gear test this stuff through and through.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Exactly.
Well, I think I'm really gonna like the solitude stuff. I mean, this is a bear hunting magazine podcast, but everybody knows I whitetail hunt a ton.
Yeah.
And most bear hunters are going to be whitetail hunting, tree stand whitetail hunting.
That seems right.
And so this is good stuff. You know, I think probably the hardest thing, maybe a barrier to entry, if you could say, from getting some of this stuff is just the cost of it.
Yep.
And then not knowing the fit of it. And I hope that maybe even people listening to stuff like this, maybe it'll give them a little more insight, a little more confidence when they go and buy. What I usually tell people is and I've had people directly ask me, you know, say, Clay, if you were going to spend X number of dollars on First Lite gear, what would you buy? My first answer is always base layer stuff. Get that.
Yeah.
Start with the merino wool base layers. Start using that, utilizing that, and then from there you can go any direction of your needs, from all the way from rain gear. I mean, we hadn't talked about like the Seek stuff, you know, like the full scale, like really breathable, good rain gear, all the way to the sanctuary, super thick, super cold weather tree stand whitetail hunting stuff. But anyway, I just say that's like the gateway piece.
Certainly, yeah. And I think the coolest part one of the coolest parts about First Lite is our customer service team is diehard hunters. I mean, those guys are, as soon as 501 hits, they are out the door and in the hills testing our gear. They know our gear tip to tail. They can offer you the sort of the best rendition, so to speak, of real life anecdotal information about how a piece performs for your specific area.
Yeah.
And so those guys are really helpful in figuring out, you know, what is the first piece I should get? What's the fourth piece I should get? I'm going on this hunt in the Northwest Territories. What rain jacket should I take? Yeah. So those guys are around all the time, ready to answer your questions. And I think that's one of the coolest components of First Lite is those guys are just dialed, really dialed, and they're able to help anybody out. Really, it's great.
Okay, now let's pretend like nobody at First Lite's listening to this podcast, which maybe they won't.
Yeah, they probably, I don't know, maybe they will.
Maybe they will, maybe they won't. If you could give a hot tip to somebody wanting to get in on some First Lite gear, like in some historic sales, because I've noticed some trends with First Lite of when stuff goes on sale, what would you say?
Oh man, that's a good question. I think you should always peek around. Like we just did a pretty big flash sale. And that's what you're asking, like when's the hot tip? Man, I think just keep watching the social. So you'll have
these flash sales where just randomly you'll put like a percentage off.
Yeah. And I think the best thing to do is just keep track on social. You know, we're always like, we do all these incredible giveaways too. We're partnering with Go Wild right now. We're giving away a hunt with Cable Smith and Jordan Budd, which is crazy. I mean, that's just a really easy way to engage with First Lite for sure. Yeah. Follow along on social for those giveaways, and then just follow along on the individual folks too. You know, a bunch of people on Instagram, and they'll be breaking that down. You know, as we get into the year.
And what I'm alluding to, and I'm joking. It's not like you guys want people to know this stuff. It's not like a secret. But don't you usually have, like, the new stuff is usually coming out in June, July, August. Like that's like when the new lines come out. So you have some of the older stuff that often goes on sale. Yeah,
for sure. And that's usually happening, like all the new stuff's out by August typically.
Okay, so, August.
Yeah, so you've seen, we just did our big flash sale, but it'll come.
What do you call it? Didn't you call it something special?
It's just a summer flash sale, you know.
Okay, maybe that's what I'm talking about.
We did a bunch of, like, we have a bunch of new logo wear coming out. I'm wearing one of the shirts right now.
Yeah, that's a good looking
bunch
shirt.
Of hats, thanks. yeah, so there'll be, and like I said, I think the best way to get in on that info is like we'll sort of sneak peek that stuff on Instagram for sure.
And again, going back to the idea that you just can't get away from it. I mean, the stuff's not cheap. You can go buy stuff at hunting gear at other places for cheaper.
Yeah,
that's just like with anything though.
Yeah.
Everything we do, there's always like higher end stuff that's better materials, that's more, that's better designed, that's going to last longer. So it's like one of those things. But I find sometimes it's hard for people to bite the bullet and try something. But if they could get in on a sale, maybe they get it and they say, I like that piece.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the coolest parts too is we try really hard as a company to be in the we're obviously like making very expensive high apparel or high level apparel, but it's still at a price point that I would say is a little less than the competitors out there for sure. Yeah. We try to play in that arena. The other thing I'll say too is like for folks that are on the guide and outfitter side, first responders, we offer great discounts for people for their service and for their line of work. So feel free to hit us up if you're in those categories, and we want to try to respect those folks and make their jobs easier for sure.
Yeah.
So
that's good stuff.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. Man, I think we're almost to our hour, man.
Yeah,
we've been
it.
nerding out
for sure
on the gear stuff. Kevin, I would historically have called myself such a minimalist that I don't like gear, if I could say it that way.
Yep.
Like gear to me is like a necessary evil, if I could put it that way. Because I do meet guys that just nerd out of it, but I'm becoming more. But I find that maybe like at some subconscious level, I identify with that. But I'm a serious hunter. When I get into these places, I want gear, so I find that I'm having to be more conscious. Because of why I do what I do, if I could say it that way. Yeah. And I'm finding that I'm more of a gear guy than I thought.
Yeah, there you go. I appreciate that. And I think that there's all types of gear guys, right? You've got like trinkety guys that have every little thing from, super cool pocket knives all the way to like the latest headlamp. And there's people that get by with killing elk and flannels and jeans every year in Oregon. There's a whole spectrum, right? But I think that for the amount of days guys like you spend in the field and for guys that really want to stay in that tree stand longer or whatever it may be, First Lite's the way to go for sure.
Well, it's when you find that guy that really is just a minimalist and wanting to use the gear that helps him get the job done.
Right.
And then, that guy can really tell a pretty good story a lot of times because, or I mean, give you insight.
Yeah, for sure.
Because this is what I've learned is I think sometimes people, they enjoy gear so much that it becomes a big part of their hunting experience because they're not in the field every day, but they're thinking about gear. Like I see people and maybe I'm that way sometimes too, but I'm becoming a lot more conscious about my gear because the older I get, the more I do have stronger opinions, the more I realize that, there are kind of these nuances inside of gear that can really make a difference inside of your success.
Oh, yeah.
Ultimately, that's what we're after is to be in the field and be successful. So if you can go further and stay longer, then that's a good thing.
It is a good thing. Super.
Yeah. Well, hey, closing thoughts, anything you want to?
Yeah, it's exciting to be on here, man. I'm excited. We have to do I've never killed a bear.
Right. We talked about this.
And you've killed an elk?
No. Oh, no.
So I think what we should do is we should probably trade hunts. I'll take you elk hunting, you take me bear hunting.
Let's do it.
Deal.
Do it.
Spring 2020 and then fall 2020, we should do it.
That's a good idea.
I like it.
That's a good
fun.
Trade.
That'd be a sweet trade. I'll take it.
Oh, man.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it.
Podcast handshake.
That's right.
There we go.
That's right. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, right on. Well, we always say the same thing at the end of the podcast. Yeah. Keep the wild places wild because that's where the bears live.
That's awesome.
All right.
Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.